Duke's wife went to the train station every Sunday for 15 years. When he followed her, he was shocked. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. Arthur woke before the light had settled into the curtains, with the odd, sharp awareness that this Sunday could not be like the others. He lay still for a moment, listening. Somewhere along the corridor, a floorboard gave its usual soft complaint. A door latch clicked. A lighter tread, familiar as his own pulse, moved away from their bedchamber and into the dressing room beyond. He turned his head. Eleanor's side of the bed was already empty. The sheets were cool. He pushed back the covers and rose. The fire was laid but not lit, the shadows still long. A faint line of lamplight showed beneath the dressing room door. He crossed to it, every step noiseless on the thick carpet, and stood there, his hand hovering over the handle, absurdly like a boy about to overhear something forbidden. Her voice came first, quiet and steady. "That will be all, Martha. Go back to bed, or Mrs. Clark will have you polishing silver before breakfast." The maid's murmur answered her, followed by a rustle of skirts. The door opened before him, and Martha nearly collided with his chest. "Your Grace!" She dropped a curtsy, her cap askew. Arthur stepped aside. "Not a word," he said. "Go on." She darted away. He let the door swing open and filled the frame. Eleanor stood by the narrow dressing table, fastening the last button of a modest grey gown. Her hair was coiled in a simple knot, hat and gloves set ready on the chair beside her. The lamplight caught the line of her throat, the calm composure of her features. She saw him in the mirror and stilled. "You are awake early, Arthur," she said. His eyes fell to the small worn envelope resting beside her gloves. The sight of it was like an old bruise pressed suddenly hard. "So are you," he replied. "I did not mean to disturb you." She turned, her hands loosely folded. "You have a long week ahead. You should rest." "On a Sunday?" he asked lightly. That would be a novelty. Normally she would answer with a hint of a smile. Today she only inclined her head, as if she had not heard the jest. "I shall not be gone long," she said. "There will be time enough for service and for dinner." "And for 15 years, he said, "you have not been gone long." Something flickered in her eyes then, too quick to name. She glanced at the envelope as if she wished it invisible. "Arthur," she said, and there was that soft warning in her tone he knew so well. "You know this is a matter I cannot discuss," he finished for her. "Yes, I know that phrase well. I could engrave it on the mantelpiece." A faint line appeared between her brows. "You mock what you do not understand." "That would be difficult," he said. "There is so very much I do not understand." He had not meant to say it so sharply. The words hung in the small room like smoke. Eleanor did not answer at once. She picked up her gloves, then the envelope, her fingers careful around its frayed edges. "At times," she said quietly, "understanding is a luxury others cannot afford. And secrecy," he said, "is a luxury you have indulged too long." Her gaze met his. For a moment he thought, hoped, she might speak, might open that locked door in which she kept her Sundays. Then the shutters came down again. He saw it happen, as plainly as one sees a curtain drawn. "If you wish to quarrel," she said, "let it not be in the half-light before breakfast." He exhaled. "I do not wish to quarrel." "Then do not," she replied, slipping her hands into her gloves. "There is coffee in the breakfast room. I shall return before the roses have opened." She picked up the envelope and her hat and moved past him. He caught a faint trace of lavender as she passed. It was maddening that even now, even in annoyance, she moved with such quiet grace. He turned, following her into the corridor. "Eleanor." She stopped, but did not face him. "Will you not tell me where you go?" he asked. "The same place I have always gone," she said. "You know that." "I know you leave this house at an hour when no Duchess in Westbury stirs," he said. "I know you return with eyes you will not let me meet. I know you carry an envelope that has grown thinner and more worn with every year. I know nothing else." "Is it not enough to know that I return?" she asked. "No," he said more harshly than he intended. "No, it is not." She was silent for a breath. Then she said without turning, "I cannot give you what you ask." The words fell between them, flat and final. She descended the stairs, her figure small and straight against the banister's curve. He watched her until she vanished into the lower hall. A carriage door closed below. Hooves struck the gravel. The sound receded into the grey morning. Arthur stood very still. For 15 years he had watched that quiet ritual repeat itself. At first, in the early days of their marriage, he had thought it some petty errand, a whim, a charitable visit perhaps, a devotion to some village cause. He had admired her diligence. It was easy, in those first months, to admire everything about her. The envelope had appeared in the 2nd year. He had asked once, half in jest, if she were corresponding with a secret poet. "Hardly," she had replied. "The world is not so romantic, Arthur." He had believed her, or told himself he believed her. After all, there had never been the slightest impropriety in her conduct. Eleanor Blackwood moved through society like a well-bred swan through still water, never ruffled, never breathless, never aflutter with gossip. She refused some balls on grounds of health, of fatigue, of preference for quiet evenings at home. If anyone whispered about her Sundays, he did not hear it, or he refused to hear it. 15 years was a long time to refuse to hear. He dressed without ringing for his valet, the motions practiced and swift, the morning coat, the dark trousers, the crisp shirt. He tied his cravat with hands that were steadier in front of his wardrobe than they felt in his chest. When he descended to the breakfast room, the sideboard was laid, the coffee steaming. His sister, Lydia, stood near the window examining the pale sky. "You are early," she remarked. "Is the world coming to an end?" He poured himself coffee. "I might ask the same of you." "Robert is snoring," she said cheerfully. "It is intolerable." I fled. She turned, her gaze sharpening. "You look as if you slept in your boots." "I did not," he said shortly. "Has Eleanor gone out already?" Lydia asked. "Martha nearly knocked me down, flying along the corridor like a bird with its tail on fire." "She has gone," he said. Lydia hesitated. "Arthur, has she ever told you precisely what draws her out so early every week?" His hand tightened around the coffee cup. "Why do you ask?" "I am not blind," Lydia said, "nor deaf. One hears things." "What things?" he demanded. "Only that her grace is very constant in her habits," she said. "That the station staff could set their clocks by her arrival. That some find it curious." "Curiosity is the chief occupation of Westbury," he said coldly. "If she took up embroidery instead, they would call that curious as well." Lydia lifted a shoulder. "I meant nothing by it." He set down his cup. "I shall be out this morning." "Where to?" she asked. He looked at her. Lydia raised her brows, all lively interest now. "Do not say you mean to follow her," she said. He did not answer. The silence between them was confirmation enough. "Arthur," she murmured. "Is that wise?" "I am a husband," he said. "I have a right to know." "You also have a wife who has never given you cause to doubt her," Lydia replied. "If you follow her like a jealous shopkeeper, you may find what is not there, or I may find what is," he said. Lydia pressed her lips together. "Then at least do it with some discretion," she said, "for both your sakes." "That," he said, "I had already resolved." He left through the side door, not the grand front entrance, and ordered the smaller carriage, the one used for errands, with plain panels and no crest. James, his coachman, blinked at him in surprise but asked no questions. "We go to the station," Arthur said. "Keep well back from the main road. I do not wish to be seen." "Yes, Your Grace." The morning air bit at his cheeks as he stepped into the carriage. The sky was still colourless, the hedgerows black against the horizon. The wheels crunched quietly along the gravelled drive. Arthur sat opposite the empty seat where his wife should have been, and stared at the worn leather. 15 years, he thought, Sundays lost, conversations avoided, questions swallowed. How many times had he watched her return, composed and pale, as if she had been somewhere else entirely for those hours, somewhere he did not exist. It was absurd that a platform, a pile of timetables and soot, could hold more of her life than their own home did. The carriage turned off the main road before the village, taking a narrower lane that skirted the back of the station. James brought it to a halt behind a stand of trees. "We are here, Your Grace," he said. Arthur stepped down. "Wait for me. If anyone inquires, you are here on an errand for Mrs. Clark." "Yes, Your Grace." Arthur walked the rest of the way on foot, keeping to the side path. The station building emerged from the grey morning, its brick walls damp with dew. Smoke drifted lazily from a waiting locomotive on a distant track. A porter in a faded uniform pushed a trolley stacked with crates. He slowed as he neared the platform, then stopped behind a wide stack of luggage. From that vantage, he could see the main platform clearly while remaining mostly concealed. There she was. Eleanor sat on a bench near the middle, exactly where he had pictured her for years. She was not huddled or furtive. She sat upright, hands folded over the envelope in her lap, as if she were indeed in church. Her hat shadowed her face, but he could see the curve of her cheek, the line of her nose. Their small carpet-bag rested at her feet, the sort a lady might carry if she expected to travel, but it was closed, untouched. He glanced at the station clock, 20 minutes to 10. She had always left the house at 8:30. The drive took perhaps 15 minutes. That meant she sat here on this hard bench for more than an hour each week, doing nothing. His chest ached with a strange, helpless sort of anger. He had imagined in his more generous moments that she hurried to whatever business called her, then hurried home again. To see her sitting so still, as if nothing in the world required her, as if time itself paused around her, was maddening. What could possibly demand such ritual? A small boy ran along the platform, chased by a weary-looking mother. An elderly couple argued amiably over the weight of their trunks. A clergyman paced, consulting a pocket watch. Eleanor sat unmoved by it all, her gaze fixed on the empty track as if it would speak to her. As the minutes passed, Arthur watched her hands. She did not fidget. Once, she lifted the envelope slightly and turned it, as if checking that it was still there, then let it rest again. He thought of all the envelopes that had passed through his own hands, invitations, contracts, bank drafts, all open to him, all knowable. And this one, his wife's, closed to him as if he were a stranger. A whistle sounded from the far end of the line. The locomotive on the distant track gave a belch of steam and began to move. Eleanor did not turn her head. She was waiting for another train. Arthur realized his palms were damp. He curled his fingers around the edge of the crate beside him to steady them. The station master emerged from his small office, consulting a timetable. He nodded to Eleanor as he passed. She inclined her head in return. Familiarity, but not intimacy. No scandal there. Another train arrived and departed. People came and went. 10 o'clock crept closer on the clock face, the hands inexorable. Arthur's mind produced, unbidden, an image from years ago. The first time he had ever seen Eleanor in a crowded London drawing room, standing a little apart from a noisy group of girls. She had worn pale blue silk, her hands clasped neatly, her eyes taking in the scene with a calm that was almost disconcerting. He had been tired of empty chatter, of laughter that never touched the eyes. Something about her stillness had drawn him like a harbour. He had thought, then, that he could learn that stillness, live beside it, perhaps borrow some of its peace. He had not imagined it might one day shut him out. The station clock chimed the hour. At once, a fainter whistle sounded in the distance, from the opposite direction. Eleanor's shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. Her hands gripped the envelope. The train rolled in with a squeal of iron and a gush of steam, its carriages painted in dull colours, its windows spotted with grime. It seemed an ordinary train, carrying ordinary people. Arthur felt as if the air itself thickened. The carriages came to a stop. Doors opened with sharp clacks. Passengers descended. A woman with a sleeping infant, a pair of soldiers on leave, a stout gentleman with a cane, a girl laden with parcels. The platform filled with voices. Eleanor rose to her feet. Her eyes moved along the line of disembarking passengers, searching. For a moment Arthur nearly convinced himself that whoever she waited for would not appear, that he had built this entire day upon a chimera. Then he saw the young man. He stepped down from the second carriage. Perhaps 18, perhaps 19, tall but not yet filled out. He had the awkward grace of someone who had grown quickly and not entirely caught up with his own limbs. His coat was plain, his boots well worn. He carried a small valise. His hair was dark, his features finely cut. He paused, looking about with a keen, expectant air, as if he had been taught to observe everything and waste nothing. Eleanor took a step forward. Arthur felt something unpleasant twist inside him. The young man's gaze found her. His face changed, softened in a way that suggested not delight exactly, but recognition, relief. He approached, valise in hand. "Your Grace," he said. bowing slightly. Arthur stiffened. The boy's voice carried more clearly than he would have liked. He heard the title distinctly. Eleanor gave a small, almost maternal smile. "Henry," she said. "You are punctual, as always. Henry." Arthur rolled the name over in his mind. It had not featured in any of their conversations, not in 15 years. It struck him with the sharpness of something forbidden. "I would not keep you waiting," the boy replied. There was respect in his tone, but also an ease, as if this were not their first meeting. Eleanor glanced briefly around them, as if to assure herself they were not observed, then seemed to check the impulse. She was, after all, a duchess standing on a public platform. "You have grown," she said. "You look well." "You are kind to say so," he answered. His eyes, Arthur noticed, were clear grey. They held an intelligence that made him seem older than his years. Eleanor held out the envelope. Her hand trembled. "This is for you." Henry set his valise at his feet and took the envelope with both hands. "It is too much," he said quietly. "I told you. You have done more than enough. If you begin to argue," she said, "I shall be obliged to imagine you are not truly clever, and that would disappoint me very much." He smiled then quickly, self-consciously. "I would not dare." He opened the envelope and glanced at its contents. Not money alone, Arthur saw, but a folded sheet of paper. Henry's eyes moved over the writing once, twice. His jaw tightened. He slipped the paper back inside and held the envelope carefully, as if it were a fragile object. "I do not know how to thank you," he said. "You may do so in the way we agreed," Eleanor answered. "By not wasting it," he said. "Exactly." He looked at her, studying her face with an openness that made Arthur's throat dry. The boy's next words were softer. "Will he know?" Henry asked. "Someday?" Eleanor's shoulders lifted, fell. "I hope so." Henry's gaze drifted beyond her then, sweeping the platform idly as if by habit. Arthur, caught by surprise, had no time to duck fully behind the crates. For a heartbeat, those grey eyes passed over him. There was a strange flicker in them. Curiosity. Recognition. The boy did not linger. He turned back to Eleanor. "It has always troubled me," Henry said, "that he does not know the measure of what you have done." "This is not about me," she said quickly. "It is precisely about you," he replied. "Without you, I should have been elsewhere." "You would have been somewhere," she said. "You have always had a mind that would not be easily squandered." He shook his head. "It is more than that, and you know it." She opened her mouth as if to protest, then closed it again. He went on more quietly. "You have written every month," he said. "You have never failed to send what was needed. You have sat on this platform year after year, waiting for trains that did not always come. You have put yourself at the service of a boy who is nothing to you." "You are not nothing," she said. The words escaped before she could stop them. "A boy," he amended, "who is nothing to you in the eyes of the world." She looked away toward the track. "The world's eyes are not my concern." "They are his concern," Henry said gently. "Are they not?" She did not answer. Henry's voice softened further. "Do you think so little of him that you believe he would despise you for this?" "It is not his opinion, I fear," she said. "It is what the truth would do to him." Henry hesitated. "But surely," he ventured, "if he is the man you believe him to be, your grace will not hate me when he learns the truth." Arthur stepped forward, his footsteps ringing along the wooden platform as Eleanor turned her head toward the sound. Eleanor turned sharply at the sound of footsteps. For an instant, the steam drifting from the engine blurred the figure at the far end of the platform. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Someone was there. Someone listening. The air felt suddenly thinner. "Is something amiss?" Henry asked. She forced herself to look away from the shadowed figure and back at him. "No," she said. "Nothing at all. You must not miss your connection." He studied her face, clearly unconvinced, but a porter was already calling the next departure. Passengers began to climb aboard. The moment could not stretch much longer. "Will I see you again before I go up to London?" he asked. "I do not know," she replied honestly. "But you shall have letters, as always." His jaw clenched. "Letters are not the same. They are what we have," she said gently. He nodded once, accepting what could not be changed. He lifted her gloved hand to his lips, a gesture learned from books rather than habit, and then seemed embarrassed by his own boldness. "Goodbye then, Your Grace," he said. "Thank you for everything." She wanted to tell him there was nothing to thank her for, that her effort was a grain of sand against the weight of what he had been denied, but the words would not fit in her throat. "God keep you, Henry," she said instead. He picked up his valise and moved toward the carriage. At the doorway he paused and looked back, as if fixing the sight of her on his mind. Then he vanished inside. The whistle shrieked. The train jolted, wheels grinding. Slowly it pulled away, carriages clattering past until only the receding tail lamp remained, a red star fading into the grey. Eleanor stood very still. Her fingers were empty. No envelope. No task to pretend she did not care about. Only the widening space where Henry had been. The platform seemed to tilt slightly beneath her feet. She drew a steadying breath and turned to leave, and stopped. Arthur Blackwood stood not 20 paces away. He had come out of the thin mist like an accusation, his dark coat stark against the pale morning, his face unreadable. She did not know how long he had been there. Long enough, she guessed, to see everything. Her heart gave a single painful leap, then oddly steadied. There it was then, the thing she had feared come at last. "Arthur," she said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. He did not move toward her. "You did not tell me the station had become your chapel," he said. "I might have joined you in your devotions." The words were smooth, but his eyes were not. There was something wounded there, sharp and bright. Her mind raced, counting the years of concealment, the weight of her promise, the boy's future, the old Duke's grave. The balance had shifted without her consent. "How long have you been here?" she asked. "Long enough to hear myself invoked," he replied. "Or rather, long enough to hear a stranger invoke me on your behalf." She flinched. "You should not have followed me." "My apologies," he said. "It did not occur to me to request your permission. I assumed a husband might be allowed to know where his wife goes every Sunday." There was no answer to that which did not betray someone. She pressed her lips together. Arthur's gaze slid to the empty track where Henry's train had vanished. "Who is he?" he demanded. "This Henry, to whom you give envelopes and blessings and 15 years of Sunday mornings." "A young man under my protection," she said. "That is all you need know." "That is all you will say," he corrected. "There is a difference." She felt weariness wash over her. "Arthur, please. Not here. Not like this." "Where then?" he asked. "At home?" "In my study, with the door safely shut. While you tell me nothing in a more comfortable chair." She glanced around. A porter hovered near the luggage, pretending not to listen. A woman in a bonnet watched them openly. Any raised voice would be carried straight to the village before noon. "Come home," she said quietly. "If we are to speak of anything, it must be there." He considered her for a moment, jaw tight. "Very well," he said at last. "We shall speak at home." He turned on his heel and strode away, leaving her to follow or remain as she pleased. She stood where she was for one long breath. Then she gathered what remained of her composure and walked after him. The ride back to Blackwood Hall was conducted in silence. They sat opposite each other in the carriage, the space between them crowded with questions neither dared utter before the servants. Arthur kept his gaze fixed on the window. The hedgerows slipped by, the bare fields, the distant smoke of the village. His hand rested on his knee, fingers tapping an uneven rhythm. Eleanor watched those fingers for a moment, remembering how steady they had been when he had first taken her hand in a London garden years ago. She had trusted that steadiness then, trusted that he would not falter. She dropped her gaze to her own lap. Her hands lay folded, gloves immaculate. If she looked closely, she could see a faint tremor in the leather. She thought of Henry's eyes when he had asked, "Will he know?" Someday. She thought of Arthur's face now, tensed, hardened, but still her husband's. She was caught between two promises, both given years before, both made in earnest. There was no path that did not wound one of them. The carriage rumbled beneath the stone arch of the hall and drew to a stop. A footman opened the door. Arthur stepped out without waiting for her and strode up the steps. Eleanor descended more slowly. The familiar facade of Blackwood Hall loomed before her, its columns, its windows, its impenetrable respectability. She felt, absurdly, as if she were bringing scandal into the house in her skirts. Mrs. Clark, the housekeeper, appeared in the doorway, all proper concern. "Your Graces," she said, "breakfast is laid. Shall I—" "Not now," Arthur said. "We will not be disturbed." "Yes, Your Grace." He walked directly to his study. Eleanor followed, the click of her heels sharp on the marble floor. Inside the study, the air smelled of leather and ink, of all the decisions and documents that had passed across Arthur's desk. He closed the door with a firm hand. "Now," he said, "we may speak." She removed her hat and set it carefully on a side table. For a moment she laid her fingers on its brim, as if anchoring herself. "You should not have come to the station," she said. "It was not meant for you." "I gathered that much," he replied. "You meant it for him." She looked up. "You are angry." "I understand, but anger will not help us." "What will help us?" he asked. "Silence? Another 15 years of polite evasion?" Her throat tightened. "Do not say 15 years as if they were simple." "They were not simple for me," he said. "I assure you." "And you think they were for me?" He laughed, short and mirthless. "You have walked away from this house every Sunday with your secrets intact, and walked back into it the same. If that is hardship, you have concealed it very well." "Concealment," she said, "has been the point." "Yes," he said softly. "That much is clear." She drew a breath. "Arthur, listen to me. What you saw today, what you heard, is not what you think." "Is it not?" he demanded. "I saw my wife on a public platform with a young man who addressed her as Your Grace with more familiarity than some of my tenants. I saw her hand him an envelope whose contents he described as too much. I heard him speak of her letters, her efforts, her constancy, and I heard him wonder aloud whether I would hate him when I learned the truth." She closed her eyes briefly. "He should not have said that within earshot. It was careless. It was honest," Arthur said. "Someone in this arrangement values honesty, at least." She opened her eyes. "You think this is an intrigue," she said. "An affair. A romance dragged out for the pleasure of deception." "What else am I to think?" he asked. "You have given me nothing with which to think otherwise." "I have given you my word," she said quietly. "All these years I have given you my presence, my care, my loyalty. Along with your absence, your evasions, your Sunday mornings." His jaw tightened. "You have given me part of yourself and hidden the rest." "I married a whole woman, Eleanor, or thought I did." "You married a woman who already carried a promise," she said, the words slipping out before she could recall them. He stared at her. "What promise?" "I cannot tell you," she said. His expression changed. Something in it shut like a door. "You cannot," he repeated, "or you will not." "It is not my secret alone," she said. "I am bound by another's honor as well as my own." "And my honor?" he asked. "Does that weigh nothing in your balance?" Her hands clenched. "Everything I have done has been for your honor." He gave a small, disbelieving huff. "It is a novel method of honoring a man to keep him in deliberate ignorance." "Sometimes ignorance is a mercy," she said. "For whom?" he demanded. "For me or for you?" She looked away. The room felt suddenly smaller, the walls closer. "Do you love him?" Arthur asked. The question struck her like a physical blow. "What?" "The boy," he said. "Henry. Do you love him?" She swallowed. "I care for him. That is not an answer. It is the only one I can give." His mouth flattened. "Very well," he said. "If you will not speak, I must conclude for myself." Fear flared in her. "Conclude what?" "That my wife has spent 15 years supporting a young man in secret," he said crisply. "That she sees him regularly, that she writes to him, worries over him, sends him money, blessings, counsel. That she stands with him on a platform, speaking of what will happen when I learn the truth. What conclusion would you draw, Eleanor?" "It is not what you believe," she said desperately. "On my life it is not." "Your life may be innocent," he said. "But your secrecy is not, nor is the way you have allowed me to play the fool." "I have never thought you a fool," she whispered. "Then what am I?" he asked. "An obstacle? A name to be protected at all costs, even from himself? A man too weak to bear the knowledge his own wife carries?" His words cut deeper than he knew. That was in truth exactly what his father had implied all those years ago. Do not trouble him with this. He must think of the title. He must marry well. He must not dwell on youthful mistakes. She had accepted that verdict without protest. Now she saw what it had made of Arthur, a man standing in his own study, feeling betrayed by the very protection she had offered. "I have never thought you weak," she said. "Only unprepared." "For my own life?" he asked softly. "It is mine, Eleanor. If it is to be wounded, that is my risk to take." She wanted, suddenly, to tell him everything, to speak Henry's name as it should be spoken, to say, "This is your son. This is what you left behind. This is what I have tried in my clumsy way to mend." But with the words rose the image of the late Duke's face, stern and tired, the memory of his voice. "You are to marry my son into a position of great responsibility. He must not be distracted by old errors. You will not speak of this to him unless I am no longer here to bear it. Do you understand, Lady Eleanor?" She had understood too well. The Duke had died within the year. The burden had settled fully on her shoulders. "Arthur," she said, "if I break my word now, everything I have done will be for nothing. I made a promise on a deathbed. I cannot cast it aside because you are angry." His eyes flashed. "I am not merely angry," he said. "I am humiliated. I am standing in my own house listening to my own wife tell me that the wishes of a dead man outweigh the rights of her husband." "It is not about wishes," she said. "It is about consequences. There are people beyond these walls who would be harmed if the truth were mishandled. And you believe I would mishandle it," he said bitterly. "I do not know," she said. "That is the worst of it. I do not know." Silence fell between them, heavy and raw. At last he said in a quieter tone, "Very well. If you cannot trust me with the truth, I shall trust myself to find it." A chill went through her. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, "that I am not without resources. I have eyes and ears in this county, Eleanor. I have solicitors, clerks, tenants, servants. The boy has a name, a school, a face. He travels on trains that leave records. The station master sees you come and go. Do you imagine that you are the only one who can piece together a story?" Her breath caught. "You would spy on me," she whispered. "I would seek the truth you will not give," he said. "If that is spying, so be it." "Arthur, please," she said. "Do not." "Why not?" he asked. "If the truth is so terrible, should I not look it in the face? Better a hard fact than this slow torture." She felt the ground tilt under her. He would dig, question, infer. He would stumble upon half-truths and form whole conclusions from them. It would be worse than a clean confession. "Arthur," she said again, reaching out a hand, "I am asking you as your wife. Do not drag others into this. Whatever you find, you cannot put it back once it is loose." He glanced at her hand but did not take it. "You should have thought of that 15 years ago," he said, "when you chose to bind your life to mine and keep a separate life besides." She let her hand fall. He turned away, his shoulders stiff. "I have a meeting with Mr. Harcourt at 11, he said. "We are finished for now." "We are not finished," she said. He looked back at her. "We are as finished as we can be," he answered, "until I know what you will not tell me." He opened the door. On the threshold stood Mrs. Clark, her face blankly concerned. "Forgive me, Your Grace," she said. "Lady Lydia wondered if—" Arthur's expression darkened. "This is a private matter, Mrs. Clark," he said. "We are not to be interrupted." "Of course, Your Grace." She stepped back quickly, but not before the words had drifted into the corridor. "This is a private matter. We are not to be interrupted." Eleanor knew, with a sinking certainty, how that would be heard. Later, in her small sitting room, she found Lydia waiting, perched on the edge of the sofa with an anxious look. "I did not mean to pry," Lydia said at once, "but Mrs. Clark said Arthur sent her away rather sharply and, well, one worries." "There is nothing to fret over," Eleanor said. She went to the window and straightened a curtain that did not need straightening. "Forgive me," Lydia said gently, "but that is precisely what one says when there is everything to fret over." Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment. "Your brother is upset," she admitted. "He believes I have wronged him." "Have you?" Lydia asked. "I have done what I thought necessary," Eleanor said. "That is not quite the same thing," Lydia observed. Eleanor turned. "You will hear things," she said. "Words spoken in anger. You must not repeat them, not for my sake, but for Arthur's." Lydia rose. "Eleanor," she said quietly, "I am not your enemy. If there is any way in which I may help—" "There is none," Eleanor said. "Unless you can keep silence when others speculate, that would help more than you know." Lydia studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Very well," she said. "I shall be as dull and deaf as any statue, but Eleanor, if you need a friend, I am here. Do not carry everything alone." Eleanor felt a prick of unexpected tears. "I have been carrying it alone for so long," she said softly. "I scarcely know how to do otherwise." Lydia crossed the room and briefly squeezed her hand. Learn, she said. For your own sake. When Lydia had gone, Eleanor sat at her writing desk and stared at the blank page. Her quill hovered. She thought of writing to Henry at once, warning him. But what could she say? The Duke suspects me. Take care. That would only alarm him. In the end, she wrote nothing. She folded her hands, feeling the constraint of her promise like a chain. While she sat in stillness, Arthur moved in the opposite direction. His restlessness drove him out of the house, down to the stables, and then, almost before he knew his own intention, back toward the village. At the station, he asked to speak with the station master in the cramped little office that smelled of coal and paper. "You see a great many people come and go, Mr. Riggs," Arthur said. "Yes, Your Grace," the man replied, bobbing his head. "Every day, sir." "And on Sundays?" Arthur asked casually. "Quieter of a Sunday, sir," Riggs said, "save for the late morning. There is always the 10 o'clock from the north and—" "Well?" "And?" Arthur prompted. Riggs shifted his weight. "Begging your pardon, Your Grace, but Her Grace is a regular sight. Never any trouble, mind you. Sits quiet as a mouse, she does. Has done for years." "How many years?" Arthur asked. "Oh, well now." Riggs scratched his head. "Ever since I came here, near 15 years, I should think. Always on the same bench, always of a Sunday. The lads say they could lay the rails by her shadow." Arthur's mouth tightened. "And the young man who met her this morning?" "Mr. Ainsworth, sir?" Riggs said. "He has passed through a few times these last years. Polite young gentleman. Keeps himself to himself." "You know his name," Arthur said. "Only from his ticket, sir," Riggs replied hurriedly. "I do not pry, but, well, one notices. Her Grace is generous, you see. There have been letters and sometimes parcels, always put into the boy's hands or sent on ahead. She sees they reach him proper." "Letters," Arthur repeated. "Yes, Your Grace." Arthur thanked him and left, his thoughts churning. The name lodged in his mind, Ainsworth. By afternoon he had sent a discreet note to his solicitor in town, requesting information on a Henry Ainsworth educated at Westbridge School. 2 days later, a neat packet arrived in reply. Arthur took it to his study and opened it with fingers that were steady now, gathering strength from the feel of paper yielding to his will. Inside were several sheets of information, and clipped to one of them, a copy of a birth certificate. He read quickly. Name: Henry Ainsworth. Date of birth: nearly 15 years past. Mother: Mary Ainsworth. Father: line left blank. He stared at the blank space until the edges of the paper blurred. Among the other documents were receipts, photocopies of school accounts, notes on funds paid from an anonymous benefactor, described only as a lady of rank, Westbridge School, allowances, books, clothing, journey expenses. He saw Eleanor's careful hand in every line, even if the ink here was not hers. His throat tightened. He went at once to her sitting room. She was not there, but her writing desk was. He hesitated only a moment before trying the drawer. It opened easily. The small inner compartment, however, was locked. He searched its edge with his fingers and found the catch. It gave with a soft click. Inside lay a stack of papers bundled with ribbon. He untied them and spread them on the desk. Receipts, years of them. Withdrawals from her pin money, from a private account, always on or near a Sunday. Always to the same destination, Westbridge School, Mr. Henry Ainsworth. At the bottom of the pile was another copy of the birth certificate he had just seen, folded more carefully, as if it had been handled often. He opened it, staring again at the blank where a father's name should be. The room seemed suddenly very quiet. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. A 15-year-old boy, a mother of no rank, a blank line, a duchess who had devoted 15 years of Sundays and a portion of her income to his welfare. Letters, parcels, envelopes at the station. Arthur's mind leaped to the most obvious conclusion and seized it with savage clarity. He gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles white, and whispered into the stillness, "Whose child is he?" For a while, Arthur could only stand in the middle of Eleanor's sitting room, the papers limp in his hand. The dates lined up too neatly. The first receipt shortly after their wedding, regular sums each term. Occasional larger amounts marked winter clothing or journey, all in that clerk's precise hand. always under the same name, always Henry Ainsworth. He heard the faint swish of skirts in the corridor, the murmur of a maid's voice. He gathered the papers quickly, shoving them back into the compartment with a carelessness that made the ribbon slip sideways. The little catch clicked shut just as the door opened. Eleanor stepped in. She halted at the sight of him. Her gaze dropped at once to the closed drawer, then lifted to his face. For a heartbeat they stared at one another in naked knowledge. "You have been in my desk," she said. "I am in my own house," he replied. "It is still my desk," she said. "My private things." "You forfeited the word private," he said, "when you used it to build a wall inside my marriage." Her hands tightened on the edge of the nearest chair. "You had no right to look." "And you," he said, "had no right to keep 15 years of secrets." Silence stretched. Somewhere beyond the door a clock chimed the hour, a small, decorous sound that seemed absurd against the thrum of his pulse. At last, she said very quietly, "What did you take?" "Nothing," he said. "I needed to see, not to steal." "Then you saw," she said. "And you still know nothing." "I know a great deal more than I did yesterday," he answered. "I know that you have spent a considerable part of your allowance supporting the education of a boy whose birth certificate carries no father's name. I know that his age matches the years of your Sunday pilgrimages. I know that you have hidden all of it from me. That is not nothing." Her lips parted. "Arthur, listen." He lifted a hand. "Do not tell me again that you are bound by silence. I am weary of that refrain." "You will not understand," she said. "Try me," he answered. She drew a breath, then seemed to think better of it. The words died on her tongue. He laughed once, low and bitter. "Of course you cannot. Forgive me. I keep forgetting." Her eyes darkened. "You speak as if I enjoyed this," she said, "as if secrecy were some game I chose to play." "What am I to think?" he demanded. "That you are a martyr? That you have nobly sacrificed yourself for a boy who appears by magic and calls you gracious?" "He calls me so because of my title," she said. "Not because I deserve it." Arthur looked toward the window rather than answer. If he stared at her any longer, he was not sure what would come out of his mouth. Eleanor watched him, a little of the color draining from her cheeks. "What will you do?" she asked at last. "What I should have done years ago," he said. "I will stop pretending that not knowing is a virtue." He brushed past her and left the room. In the corridor, he almost collided with Lydia. "Arthur," she exclaimed, "for you look as if you have swallowed thorns." He caught her arm and drew her into the nearest empty anteroom, closing the door. "If you intend to scold me," he said, "do it quickly. I have no patience left." "I do not wish to scold you," she said. "I wish to know what is happening. Half the staff are walking on the edges of their shoes. Mrs. Clark looks as if someone has asked her opinion." He sank into a chair, the papers still crumpled in his hand. After a moment he opened his fingers, letting her see the birth certificate. Lydia took it and read. Her eyes flicked up. "A child," she said. "Who?" "Her protégé," Arthur said. "Henry Ainsworth, 15 years old, educated at Westbridge on funds supplied by an anonymous lady. Meet him on Sundays, write him letters, send him money. Keep him as far from her husband's notice as possible. You see how tidy it all is." Lydia stared at him. "You think he is hers?" "What else am I to think?" he asked. "Do the sums. Our marriage took place 16 years ago. Allow a year on either side. There is room enough for a scandal." "There is also room enough for any number of other arrangements," Lydia said. "Arthur, wait. You know Eleanor. Does she strike you as a woman who would carry on an affair, bear a child, abandon it, then secretly educate it while living under your roof as your wife?" "She strikes me as a woman capable of living an entire second life beside the first," he said sharply. "Because she has done precisely that." Lydia flinched. "Have you asked her directly?" "I have asked until the words have worn grooves in my mouth," he said. "She will not answer." "Then perhaps her silence is not what you think," Lydia said. "Do you defend her because you know something?" he asked. "Or because you prefer the comfort of believing no one in this house is capable of wrongdoing?" She hesitated. "I know nothing concrete," she said. "Only that when you speak of her as if she were cold or deceitful, it jars. I have seen her sit with the vicar's invalid daughter for hours. I have seen her give away gowns without fanfare, send baskets to widows who never know from whom they came. That is not the conduct of a woman who plays with hearts." Charity does not erase deceit, he said. Nor does secrecy prove guilt, she replied. There may be more to this child than you see. Perhaps, he said. But until someone chooses to tell me what that is, I must assume the worst. It is all I have been given. Lydia looked down at the certificate again. The father's name is blank, she murmured. Yes, he said. How convenient, for everyone involved. Arthur, she said quietly, be careful. False certainty has ruined more marriages than true wrongdoing. There is nothing false about what I have read, he answered. Only about what I have been told. He left her standing there and went back to his study. The solicitor's packet contained more than the birth certificate. There were notes on Henry's performance at school, letters from the headmaster praising his diligence, his aptitude for mathematics and languages. One line in a note from the headmaster caught his eye. The boy shows a seriousness beyond his years, perhaps the mark of his uncertain birth, though his bearing and manner suggest that his blood is not common. Arthur's jaw clenched. Not common. Noble, then. Illegitimate, but of rank. The headmaster had danced around the word. He thought of Eleanor's face at the station, the softness in her voice when she said Henry's name. He thought of the boy's features. There had been something familiar there, but he had been too angry to see it clearly. He told himself it was resemblance to some other man, the phantom father who had used Eleanor and left her to clean the consequences in secret. His thoughts circled that image until it threaded itself into his memory, as if it had always been there. He could not bear to see her at dinner. He sent word that he was unwell and took a tray in his study. Through the half-open window, he heard faint sounds from the drawing-room. Lydia's laugh, the clink of china, Eleanor's quiet voice. They reached him like echoes from another house. Later, when the house had settled into evening, he called for Mrs. Barker, the oldest of the maids, who had been in service since his father's time. She came to the study doorway, curtsied, and stood wringing her hands. "You sent for me, Your Grace?" "Yes," Arthur said. "Come in. Shut the door." She obeyed, looking nervous. "You have been at Blackwood for how long?" he asked. "Near 30 years, sir," she said. "Since your mamma was alive. Then you remember the early days of my marriage," he said. "When her Grace first came." "Oh, yes, sir," Mrs. Barker said eagerly. "So pretty she was, and so quiet-like. Not one for fuss, no, sir. Do you recall anything unusual in that time?" he asked. "Any visitors, any disturbances?" She frowned. "Oh, I do not like to speak out of turn, Your Grace." "You will say nothing of this to anyone," he said, "but I require honesty." Mrs. Barker shifted her weight. "There was that time," she said slowly, "in the first year. Her Grace went to the village with Mrs. Clark, came back white as her handkerchief she did, shut herself in her room. I took her a tisane, but she would hardly touch it." "What had happened?" Arthur asked sharply. "I do not know, sir," the maid said quickly. "I would not presume. But the next week there was a box of jewels sent away. Mrs. Clark told me to pack them careful. Then Mr. Hewitt took them to be sold in town. Her Grace said they were not to her taste, but—" She darted a look at Arthur. "Begging your pardon, sir, they were fine pieces." Arthur remembered those jewels vaguely, gifts from his father to his new daughter-in-law. "And my father?" he asked. "Did he speak to her?" "Oh, yes, sir," Mrs. Barker said. "He came to her sitting room one evening, before his last illness. I was outside with a tray. They shut the door, but one hears things, voices like. I heard him say something about duty and the past, and that it would all be managed. Her Grace was crying, I think. When he left, her eyes were red." Arthur's hands tightened on the back of his chair. "Did you hear any names?" he asked. "Of places or people?" "No, sir," Mrs. Barker said. "Only that he said, 'He need not know,' and 'It will not touch him.' Those words I remember." He felt a strange ringing in his ears. He had always assumed that conversation had concerned his own youthful indiscretion, the maid his father had packed off, and the child he had been persuaded not to think about. But what if he had been wrong? What if the error his father had managed belonged not to him but to Eleanor? In his mind, his father's voice merged with Eleanor's and the old Duke's solemn gaze. "You will not speak of this to him unless I am no longer here to bear it." "Thank you, Mrs. Barker," he said. "That is all. You may go." When she had left, he sat alone in the dimming light, the headmaster's letter and the birth certificate side by side on the desk. The story wrote itself with brutal ease. A young woman of good family, perhaps entangled before marriage, a child born under a different name, hidden away, a powerful father-in-law arranging matters to save a title, a marriage built on that concealment. He despised the picture, but the more he tried to tear it apart, the more the pieces clung. The next Sunday loomed in his mind like a fixed point on a map. Henry would not be there, perhaps, but the rhythm of the day was the same. Eleanor would go to the station, habit as much as necessity. She would sit and stare at the rails, thinking herself unseen. This time he would not lurk behind crates. He would stand in front of her and demand that she look at him while she lied. The days leading up to it passed in a strain that touched every corner of the house. Conversation at meals was careful, light. Eleanor and Arthur spoke to one another only when politeness required it. Lydia glanced between them with a worried crease in her brow. On Friday evening, Lydia cornered Eleanor in the music room, where the Duchess sat with an unopened book on her lap. "You two are going to make us all quite mad," Lydia said without preamble. Eleanor looked up. "I beg your pardon?" "You and Arthur," Lydia said. "The air around you is like thunder. One expects lightning at any moment." Eleanor attempted a smile. "We have had a disagreement," she said. "Married people do, I am told." "This is not a disagreement," Lydia said. "This is a siege. He is outside your walls with cannons and you are inside with your pride, and the rest of us are standing in the moat getting wet." Eleanor closed the book. "I am sorry to make you uncomfortable." "You need not apologize to me," Lydia said. "Arthur is the one I should like to shake, but I am not sure he would notice." "Do not be too hard on him," Eleanor said softly. "He has discovered things in a manner I never intended." "You did intend that he should not discover them at all," Lydia said. "That is the difficulty." Eleanor's fingers tightened on the book's spine. "I intended to spare him pain." "He is in pain now," Lydia said. "Would it not have been better to share the burden from the beginning?" "You say that because you do not know the burden," Eleanor replied. "It is not only ours. There is a boy in this, a future, a name that is not mine." Lydia's eyes widened. "So there is a child." Eleanor realized too late what she had said. "I should not have spoken," she murmured. "I am not asking for particulars," Lydia said. "Only, Eleanor, if you are doing this for Arthur's sake, consider that he is a man, not a porcelain vase. He can endure more than you think. What he cannot endure is being shut out." "I know," Eleanor whispered. "Oh, I know." "Then tell him," Lydia urged. "It is not so simple as opening my mouth," Eleanor said. "If I speak, I break a promise to the dead. If I do not, I break something in the living. There is no path that does not leave wreckage." Lydia sat beside her. "Sometimes the only choice is where the wreckage falls," she said gently. "Choose so that you can live with yourself afterwards." Eleanor stared at her hands. "I have lived 15 years with what I chose," she said. "I am not sure I have done well." Saturday passed under a tense, bright sky. Arthur spent most of it in the estate office, going over accounts with more intensity than they deserved. Eleanor visited tenants with Mrs. Clark, walking from cottage to cottage with a basket on her arm, grateful for tasks that required no thought. That night, as she brushed out her hair before the mirror, Arthur came into the bedchamber. They had kept to separate rooms in recent days, a fact the servants no doubt read in their own fashion. His presence here now made the air feel thinner. "I leave early in the morning," he said. She set down the brush. "So do I." "I am riding over to inspect the northern fields," he said. "There have been complaints of drainage. I may not return before luncheon." She turned to face him. "You are not a farmer, Arthur. Mr. Hales can inspect the fields." "Mr. Hales reports to me," he said. "I prefer to see for myself." She heard the emphasis and understood. He preferred to see everything for himself now. He no longer trusted reports, least of all hers. "Very well," she said. "I hope the fields oblige you." He hesitated, as if some part of him wished to say more, then only inclined his head and left. She watched the closed door, feeling the ache in her chest throb. In his own dressing room, Arthur stared at his reflection, Lydia's words echoing faintly under the roar of his own certainty. False certainty has ruined more marriages than true wrongdoing. He did not feel uncertain. The pieces fit too well. If he was wrong, then the universe had taken pains to mislead him. He slept in fragments, waking to the image of Eleanor on the platform, the boy beside her, the envelope between them like a token of vows never spoken. At dawn, the house was quiet. Eleanor rose and dressed as she always did on Sundays, choosing a plain gown, a modest hat. Her fingers lingered on the small packet she had prepared for Henry, a letter, a little extra money for his journey, a book she thought he might like. She hesitated, then laid the book aside. The time for gifts was ending. He would have to stand on his own feet soon. She slipped the letter and notes into a fresh envelope. The one she had used for years was too worn. It lay in her drawer like a relic. Downstairs in the yard, Arthur's horse stamped and snorted. He spoke in low tones to the groom, then mounted with the easy grace of long practice. "Northfields, your grace?" the groom asked. "Yes," Arthur said. "I will take the longer path by the river. There and back will serve." He nudged the horse forward. The animal surged into motion. At the end of the drive, instead of turning left toward the fields, Arthur drew the reins and took the right-hand fork, the one that led to the village, and beyond it, the station. Inside the house, Eleanor descended the staircase, envelope in hand, unaware that the man she believed to be riding toward distant fields was trotting toward the same narrow platform where she meant to sit. The sky was low and pale, the air still. Somewhere, far off, a train gave a lonely whistle as both of them moved along their separate roads toward the place where their paths would meet, and, once met, could never be untangled again. Arthur reached the station before the church bells had finished striking 9. He dismounted in the yard behind the building and handed the reins to a surprised stable boy. "Walk him," Arthur said. "I shall not be long." "Yes, your grace." He crossed the cobbles, boots quick on the stone. The air smelled of coal and damp. A thin crowd of early travellers moved along the platform, their voices low in the morning hush. Eleanor was already there. She sat on the same bench, gloved hands folded around a fresh envelope. Her profile was calm, but the line of her shoulders was tense. She stared at the empty rail as if willing something into existence. Arthur walked straight toward her. She noticed him only when his shadow fell over her. Her head snapped up. For a moment she simply stared, as if she doubted her own eyes. "Arthur," she said. "Did you expect someone else?" he asked. She rose slowly. "What are you doing here?" "Today," he said, "we stop pretending that this platform is another country where I have no right to stand." Her fingers tightened on the envelope. "I thought you were riding to the northern fields." "I changed my mind," he said. "I find myself more interested in the harvest you have been reaping here." "This is neither the time nor the place," she said. "The boy is due on the 10 o'clock train," he answered. "If there is ever to be a time or a place, it is here and now." Her eyes searched his face. "What do you think you know?" He laughed shortly. "Enough to be made ridiculous for 15 years. "That was never my intention," she said. "Intentions are a poor shelter," he replied. "I have letters, receipts, a birth certificate. I have a name. Henry Ainsworth. I have seen you with him. I have heard enough to know there is a child whose life is bound to yours by more than charity." Her breath caught. "You went through my papers." "Yes," he said. "You left me no choice." "You had a choice," she said. "You chose not to trust me." "Trust?" he repeated. "Trust is not the blind acceptance of permanent secrecy. Trust is not asking a man to share his life with half of his wife." She looked away, swallowing. "You will draw the wrong conclusions." "Then give me the right ones," he said. "I cannot." He stepped closer. "Then I will ask him, in front of you. Perhaps the boy you have raised in secrecy has more courage than you do." A pulse beat at the base of her throat. "You would shame him at the very moment he goes out into the world," she whispered. "I would shame no one who does not deserve it," he said. "But I will no longer protect your silence at the expense of my sanity." She stared at him. "I did not ask you to protect anything. You asked it with every refusal," he replied. "Every Sunday you chose the station over honesty. You made this place your altar. I would like to know what you have been worshipping." "A promise," she said, "a mistake, a life." The simplicity of the words struck him more than if she had shouted. He opened his mouth to answer, but the station clock drew his eye. 10 minutes to the hour. Around them the platform grew busier. A family herded children toward a carriage. A porter pushed a trolley, his steps quick. Somewhere down the line, a whistle blew. Eleanor's hand tightened on the envelope until the paper crinkled. "Arthur," she said lower now. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, remember that he has done nothing wrong. If you hate anyone at the end of this, let it be me. Hate, he said, is not the word, but there is something I will not be able to forgive. What is that? She asked. Being made a stranger to my own life, he said. The whistle sounded again, closer. The tracks shivered. Steam curled over the far curve of the line as the train approached. Eleanor seemed to shrink slightly inward, bracing herself. I beg you, she said, do not be cruel. If there is cruelty here, he replied. It began long before I arrived. The train clattered into the station, metal screeching. It slowed, shuddered, and stopped with a final hiss. Doors banged open. Passengers descended in a slow, uneven stream. Eleanor's eyes scanned the faces. Arthur watched her. There, she breathed. Henry stepped down from the third carriage. He carried a slightly larger valise this time, his coat better cut but still plain. He looked older already, more deliberate in his movements. His gaze swept the platform and caught on Eleanor. Relief eased his face. Then he saw Arthur beside her. His stride faltered. He stopped, standing there with the train at his back, like someone confronted with an examination he had not expected. Your Grace, he said, bowing first to Eleanor, then to Arthur with a flicker of uncertainty. I did not know. You did not know I would be here, Arthur said. Nor did my wife. We are all suffering from a lack of knowledge today, it seems. Henry straightened. His eyes were a clear, steady grey, like a winter sky. Up close, Arthur could see details he had missed before. The set of his jaw, the line of his brow. They were uncomfortably familiar. Henry, Eleanor said softly, this is my husband, the Duke of Westbury. Yes, Your Grace, Henry said. I recognized him from... He broke off, flushing. From what? Arthur asked. Henry hesitated. From a picture, he said. Her Grace once showed me. Arthur's gaze snapped to Eleanor. You have shown him my likeness, though you would not show me his existence. I thought you should know who was paying for you, Eleanor said to Henry, ignoring Arthur's barb. Not merely a title. Henry looked between them, understanding dawning. So he does not know, he said quietly. He knows something, Arthur said. Whether it is the truth remains to be seen. The boy drew himself up, as if preparing for an unwelcome duty. He spoke carefully. If I have caused trouble between you, he said, I am sorry. That was never my wish. You have caused nothing, Eleanor said quickly. This is not on your shoulders. Arthur's hands curled at his sides. Tell me, he said, focusing on Henry now. Plainly and without embroidery, who are you to my wife? Henry looked straight at him. Her Grace is my guardian, he said. My benefactress. She has cared for me since I was born. Cared for you, Arthur repeated. In what way? She has ensured I had food, clothing, schooling, Henry said. She has written to me, advised me. Without her I would not have Westbridge, nor this chance in London. Why? Arthur asked. Why would the Duchess of Westbury take such an interest in a boy of no name? Henry's mouth twitched faintly. I have a name, Your Grace, he said. Mary Ainsworth gave it to me. She was a housemaid in your father's service once. The station seemed to narrow around Arthur. My father's service, he said slowly. You mean Blackwood Hall? Yes, Your Grace, Henry said. Arthur's heart beat hard against his ribs. A hallway, long ago. Laughter in the servants' wing. A girl with a shy smile and deft hands. A moment of carelessness that had weighed on him for months, then faded under the pressure of duties and his father's stern control. Mary, he said under his breath. Henry's eyes sharpened. You remember her? Arthur did not answer. Eleanor's hand brushed Henry's sleeve. Go on, she said gently. He needs to hear it from you. Henry swallowed. When my mother was with child, he said, choosing the words awkwardly, your father arranged that she be sent away. There was an agreement. She would be provided for, and so would I, on condition that she did not speak of my father's name. Not openly. Not to anyone who might spread scandal. Scandal, Arthur repeated. The word tasted bitter. Henry nodded. We lived in a little town some miles from London. A gentleman visited once when I was very young. I remember him only as a voice. He spoke with my mother in private. After that, money began to arrive. Not much, but enough. Arthur's father. Of course. coming to put his own seal on the arrangement. In time, Henry went on, the money did not come directly from him but through a lady. Letters with the same careful hand, always signed with a single initial. The headmaster at Westbridge called her the Lady of Rank. He said I must be very grateful. And were you? Arthur asked. Henry's jaw tightened. Grateful, yes, but also curious. I wanted to know who had taken such trouble. I asked my mother. She told me only that the lady was kind and that she did what she did because of my father. Arthur's palms were damp. And who is your father? He said. You may speak plainly here. There is no one to scandalize but the parties themselves. Henry held his eyes. He looked very young just then, but also oddly resolute. My mother told me, he said quietly, that my father was a gentleman who could not acknowledge me without harming many people. She would not give me his name for a long time. When she fell ill, she told me the rest. She said he was the son of a duke. She gave me a name then. Arthur Blackwood. She made me promise never to seek you out unless I was sent for. She said my life was a debt you did not know you owed. A gust of cold air sliced through Arthur. The platform, the people, the tracks. They all receded for a moment, leaving only the boy's face. Eleanor's voice broke the silence. Arthur, she said, say something. He could not. His mouth would not shape words. He stared at Henry as if the boy had grown out of the railway sleepers. Henry shifted his weight. If she was wrong, if she lied, he said, then I am sorry to have repeated it. But she died believing it. She did not lie, Eleanor said. She never lied about him. Arthur found his voice rough and thin. How long have you known? He asked Eleanor. Since before we married, she said. The world tilted again. Before, yes, she said. Your father told me. He came to me as a man who had done his best and done it badly. He said there was a boy born under his roof to a girl in his employ, that the matter had been handled. He thought it right that I know, before I took your name. He asked if I could accept you with that past. Arthur's throat hurt. And you said? I said yes, she replied simply. We all have pasts. I had no right to demand yours be spotless when my own heart was not. There was no child in your past, he said. No, she said. But there were doubts, regrets, choices I might have made otherwise. It does not matter. Your father was ashamed. He wished to ensure that the boy was cared for without dragging your name through gossip. He did not trust you to bear both the title and the scandal at the start of your public life. He told you this, Arthur said, but not me. He said you were already burdened, she answered. Your mother's death was still recent. You were taking your seat in the Lords. There were estates to settle. He thought another blow would unsteady you. He asked me, as the woman about to stand beside you, to carry it instead. Arthur recalled his father's grave, lined face in those months. The pressure, the lectures on duty, the way he had spoken of youthful folly, vague and stern. He spoke of an indiscretion, Arthur said slowly. He said it had been dealt with. He told me I might trust him, and that nothing would touch my position. And you trusted him, Eleanor said. You asked no questions. I was a coward, he said. I let him tidy my sin into a corner and pretended the room was clean. Henry watched them both, silent. Your father kept his word, Eleanor went on. He arranged an income for Mary and for the child, but he was ill already. He feared he would not live to see the boy grown. He said he wanted someone he could trust to ensure the money was used well, someone who would care not only for the obligation, but for the person. Arthur looked at her. And you volunteered, he said. I begged, she corrected. I said if I were to marry you, I must know the truth of what had been done. I asked to see the child's face. He refused at first. He said it would entangle me. But I am stubborn, as you know. In the end, he agreed that I might take charge of the funds when he died. He made me promise, however, that I would not tell you unless he failed in his duties as father to you. He died within the year, Arthur said. Yes, she said, and the promise settled on my shoulders. I saw the accounts. I learned Mary's name. I wrote, first to her, then, when she allowed it, to Henry. I saw that he went to a good school. I sent what was needed when the income your father arranged proved too small. I went to the station on Sundays to meet the messenger, then, when Henry was old enough, to see him myself when he passed through. I did what I could. It never felt like enough. Arthur looked at Henry again. The boy's eyes were bright, his jaw taut. You knew I existed then, Arthur said to him, all these years, and you said nothing. What right had I to speak? Henry asked. I am nobody. I had a name and perhaps a bloodline, but no claim. The arrangement was clear. I was to be educated, given a chance, that was all. My mother would not let me curse your name. She said you were ignorant, not cruel. When her grace came into my life, she said the same. She said I was not to seek you out, that if ever you were told it must be at the right time, in the right way, for your sake more than mine. For my sake, Arthur repeated. Yes, Henry said simply. The words felt like stones laid on his conscience. Eleanor stepped a little closer to him, though she did not attempt to touch him. Your father believed that scandal would destroy the work he had built, she said. I believed that the truth, told at the wrong moment, might shatter you. So I chose to carry it alone. It was not an easy burden, but if I spared you even a little, I thought it worth it. You did not spare me, Arthur said hoarsely. You only delayed it. And in the delay you taught me to doubt you. I know, she said. I have understood that more clearly with every year. He closed his eyes briefly. All this time, he murmured, I thought you cold, distant, married to your duty more than to me. I thought you withheld yourself, and all the while you stood between me and the full measure of my own past. There were moments, she said, when I wanted to tell you everything, when I saw you look at the Sunday clock and swallow your questions, when Henry wrote of some small triumph and I longed to share it with you, but I would see your father's face, hear his voice, and I failed. I chose fear. Fear of me, he said. Fear for you, she answered. I was a coward in that, yes. You are right to be angry, he looked at Henry. And you, do you hate me? Henry blinked. No, he said. I have been angry in quiet ways when I was younger and other boys spoke of their fathers, but I do not hate a man I have never known. I have only wondered. Arthur swallowed. His throat felt raw. Who has been more my son these 15 years? He asked. The heir I never had, or the boy I never acknowledged? Eleanor's breath hitched. Henry said nothing. He stood very straight, as if bracing himself against a wind only he could feel. Around them the platform life continued in muffled tones. A porter passed with a barrow. A woman called to her child. The train's engine puffed quietly, waiting for departure. Arthur felt the shape of his choices press in on him. He could cling to wounded pride, demand explanations until there was nothing left but apologies, or he could look at the two people before him and see, finally, what they had done in his absence. He drew a slow breath. I have wronged you both, he said. Eleanor's eyes widened. Arthur, no, he said. Do not argue. I have sinned, first in my youth, then in my neglect, and now in my suspicion. The first sin gave life to a boy I then abandoned to my father's conscience and my wife's kindness. The second allowed me to live comfortably while others did the hard work of my responsibility. The third has led me to accuse the only person who has been faithful to us both. Her lips trembled. I did not tell you to hear this. You should have, he said, years ago. Perhaps I would not have received it well. Perhaps we would have quarreled, shouted, said unforgivable things. But at least we would have been honest. Henry shifted. If you wish me to go, he said, voice rough, I will. You did not ask for this scene. You will not walk away as if you were the offender, Arthur said sharply. You have done nothing but live the life others prepared for you. He looked at Henry's valise at the train. Where are you bound? London, Your Grace, Henry said. An apprenticeship with a firm of engineers. Her Grace arranged it. I wrote a letter to a friend, Eleanor murmured. He owed me a favor. Arthur considered that. His wife had used what influence she possessed to secure their son a future in a field that would not depend on name or rank. Something practical, something solid. He felt something loosen just a little in his chest. Do you want that path? He asked Henry. Or is it merely what you were given? Henry looked surprised. I want it, he said. Very much. I like the work, the certainty of it. Numbers do not lie even when people do. A faint, wry smile touched his mouth at that last phrase, and Arthur saw with a jolt a reflection of his own expression in moments of bitter humor. He nodded slowly. Then you shall have it, he said. Not as a secret obligation, but as something I acknowledge. You will keep the apprenticeship. You will write to me as you have written to her, not for money alone, but for counsel if you wish it. If you do not, I will endure that. I have earned your distance." Henry's eyes burned suddenly. "I do not wish distance," he said, the words escaping before he could temper them. "I have imagined. But it seemed wrong to indulge dreams of a man who had no reason to want me." Arthur's hand moved of its own accord, resting briefly on the boy's shoulder. It was a tentative touch, clumsy but real. "You have more reason to want me than most," Arthur said, "and I have more reason to want you than I have ever admitted. If you can bear to know me, I will try to be something more than a name on your school bills." Henry's throat worked. "I would like that, Your Grace." Arthur's fingers squeezed once, then fell. He turned to Eleanor. Her eyes shone, but she held herself very still, as if afraid any motion would break the fragile moment. "You have carried this alone," he said to her. "You should not have. I am angry that you did. But I see now that you did it not to hurt me, but to protect us both. I have mistaken your silence for coldness. That is my shame. And mine," she said, "for letting you believe it." He looked at her fully, not as an adversary or a puzzle, but as the woman who had spent 15 years of Sundays on hard benches and longer evenings at her desk, writing to a boy who was not hers by blood and yet wholly hers by choice. "Can you forgive me," he said quietly, "for making you stand there on that platform believing yourself judged for what was, in truth, my sin?" Tears spilled over then. She lifted a hand to brush them away, but it trembled. "I have been so afraid you would say those words," she whispered, "and so desperate to hear them." "Which words?" he asked. "That it was your sin," she said, "not mine. I have carried it as if it were mine also." "It was never yours," he said. "Only the atonement was." Henry glanced toward the train where the conductor was beginning to call last notices. "I must not miss my departure," he said reluctantly. "They will not hold the schedule for Revelations." Eleanor gave a shaky laugh. "No," she said. "Go. You have a future to catch." Henry picked up his valise. He hesitated, then bowed to them both. "Thank you," he said. For all of it. For my life as it is. I will try to make it worth the trouble." "You are worth more than trouble," Eleanor said. Arthur met his eyes. "Right from London," he said. "I should like to know how you fare. Whether you succeed or stumble, I wish to hear it from you, not from a headmaster's report." Henry nodded. "Yes, Your Grace." He turned to go, then paused. "May I ask one question?" he said. Arthur inclined his head. "One. If I do well," Henry said, voice low. "If I become a man you can respect, would you ever tell anyone that I am yours?" Arthur exhaled. It was a fair question. A cruel one. "In law you can never be my heir," he said. "The title must pass as it must. Society is not gentle with such truths. There will be limits." "I know," Henry said quickly. "I ask not for place. Only for acknowledgement." Arthur felt Eleanor's gaze on him. "If you do well," he said slowly, "I will not hide my pride in you. I may call you a ward, a kinsman, a protégé. The world may choose its own word, but you will know, and I will know. And when the time is right, there are a few whose respect I value more than the world's. They shall know too." Henry's face lit with something fierce and quiet. "That is enough," he said. The conductor called again. Henry gave them one last searching look, as if fixing them in his memory, then climbed into the carriage. They watched as he found a seat by the window. He lifted a hand in an awkward half-wave. Eleanor answered with a small, steady motion. Arthur raised his hand as well, feeling the strangeness of the gesture and the rightness of it mingled. The whistle blew. The train jolted, then began to move. Carriages clattered past, the wheels humming. Henry's face was visible for a few seconds, then blurred, then gone. They stood in silence until the last carriage vanished around the curve, and only the fading echo of wheels remained. At length, Eleanor spoke. "What will we do now?" she asked. "We will go home," Arthur said. "And we will stop living as strangers. There is much to mend. A son to make room for in our hearts, if not in our line. A marriage to relearn. Can we?" she asked very quietly. He looked at her. The morning light caught the tracks of tears on her cheeks, the determination beneath her fatigue. "We must," he said. "I am not sure how, but for 15 years you have walked to this station alone. It is past time I walked with you, wherever you go next." She drew a shuddering breath. "And if I cannot forgive myself," she murmured, "then let me begin by forgiving you," he said. "Perhaps in time you will join me." She gave a small, incredulous laugh that broke and turned into another tear. He reached into his pocket and offered a handkerchief. She took it, their fingers brushing. For the first time in years, the touch did not feel like an accident, but the beginning of something chosen. They turned together toward the exit, the platform empty behind them, the rails stretching away in 2 directions, one toward the past that had shaped them, and one toward a future they would have to build with eyes open at last. The house felt different after that Sunday. Nothing had changed and everything had. The same portraits looked down from the walls. The same servants moved through the same rooms. Breakfast appeared at the same hour on the same white cloth. But there was a looseness in the air, as if invisible cords had been cut. On the first morning after, Eleanor woke before the light, as she always did on Sundays. For a moment, her body moved on habit: rise, dress, envelope, station. Then she remembered. She lay still, listening to Arthur's breathing beside her. They had slept in the same bed again, not as strangers placed side by convention, but as 2 people whose exhaustion had finally tipped them toward one another instead of away. He shifted and opened his eyes. "You are awake," he murmured. "So are you," she replied. "Are you planning to run away?" he asked. "Or will you allow me the luxury of breakfast with my wife?" "I am not going to the station," she said. A pause. "No," he said. "You are not." "I almost rose out of habit," she admitted. 15 years is a stubborn thing. "We will need new habits," he said. "Together." He reached for her hand under the covers. It startled her more than it should have. His fingers were warm, his grip gentle but firm. "Eleanor," he said, "stay, at least for this Sunday." She looked at his face in the soft light. There were lines there she had not noticed, carved by years of responsibility and, if she was honest, by her own distance. She laced her fingers with his. "I shall stay," she said. They did not speak of the station over breakfast. Lydia watched them with unhidden curiosity, as Arthur poured Eleanor's coffee and passed her the cream without needing to be asked. "You are in a better temper this morning," Lydia observed. "I find that rage is a poor breakfast companion," Arthur said. "I have dismissed him." "And whom have you invited instead?" Lydia asked. He glanced at Eleanor. "Hope," he said. "And resignation." "Resignation?" Eleanor repeated. "That you will be my wife for the rest of my days," he said lightly. "I see now there is no escape." The joke was simple, but it settled in her chest like something precious. Later that week, the first letter came from Henry. It arrived with the afternoon post, a plain envelope with a London stamp. Arthur was in his study, going over estate accounts with Mr. Hales, when the footman brought it in. "A letter for you, Your Grace," the man said. "From the city." Arthur turned it over in his hand. The handwriting on the front was careful, slightly cramped. "Thank you," he said. "That will be all." When the door closed, he held the letter for a moment, feeling an absurd reluctance to break the seal. Mr. Hales coughed discreetly. "Shall I return later, Your Grace?" "No," Arthur said. "We will finish these figures, then I will read it." He forced himself to concentrate on rents and repairs, on fields and fences, but the letter lay at the edge of his vision, like a small, pulsing thing. When Hales had gone, he picked it up again and opened it. "Dear Your Grace, I hope you will forgive the forwardness of writing so soon. Her Grace always told me one should let a man breathe before troubling him, but I do not think you will begrudge me the paper." He read of Henry's lodgings in a modest house near the river, of the noise and bustle of the city, of his first day at the engineering firm. The boy wrote of machinery and calculations with a quiet excitement that made the words come alive. At the end, after a few scratched-out attempts, Henry added, "I am still learning how to address you. To call you father on paper feels like taking a liberty I have not yet earned, and yet it seems false to write as if you were only a distant patron. For now I will remain, your grateful and bewildered son, Henry Ainsworth." Arthur's vision blurred for a moment. He wiped at his eyes with an impatient thumb and folded the letter carefully. He did not answer immediately. He took the page upstairs to Eleanor's sitting room. She looked up from her sewing when he entered. "Arthur, He held out the letter. He wrote. Her whole face lit. "Henry, do you have other secret sons I should know of?" he asked dryly. She made a small sound that was almost a laugh, then took the paper and read, her lips moving silently over the words. "Oh," she breathed when she reached the end. "Oh, the silly boy." "What has he done now?" Arthur asked. "He is tying himself in knots over how to address you," she said, "as if love were an exam one could fail." "That may not be entirely his fault," Arthur said quietly. "The subject has been poorly taught in this family." She looked up at him, eyes soft. "You could teach it differently," she said. "I mean to try," he replied. He returned to his study and took out paper of his own. "My dear Henry." He stared at the words for a long time. Then he went on. "You chose your words carefully. I will choose mine plainly. You are my son. The circumstances of your birth and the failures of your father do not change that fact. You have no need to earn what is already yours by right of blood. If you wish to call me father, you may. If you find it easier to do so first in your heart and only later on paper, I will not press you. But know this, the liberty is yours to take, not mine to grant." He wrote more, about the estate, about his own painfully acquired knowledge of machinery from managing the farms, about the way numbers and people both could be stubborn. He ended with, "You say you will try to make your life worth the trouble. You are already worth more than trouble. I look forward to the day when I am the one striving to make myself worthy of your respect. Arthur Blackwood." He carried the letter to Eleanor. "Will you read it?" he asked. "Tell me if I have said anything foolish." She took it, her fingers brushing his. As she read, she smiled once, then blinked more rapidly. "It is very good," she said at last, "except for one thing." "What is that?" he asked. "You are lying in the last line," she said. "I am not in the habit of lying in correspondence," he said stiffly. "You speak as if you are not already worthy of his respect," she said. "You are. That is not for me to decide," he answered. "Perhaps not," she said. "But I know what I would think, were I in his place reading this. I would think, here is a man I might one day be proud to resemble." He looked at her, surprised. "Is that what you think?" "Yes," she said simply. He held her gaze for a long moment. "Then perhaps there is hope for us all," he said. The weeks turned to months. Henry wrote regularly, sometimes to Arthur, sometimes to Eleanor, often to both. His letters were full of observations and small triumphs. A design praised, a calculation corrected, a mishap with a boiler that had ended in only singed eyebrows. Arthur found himself looking forward to the post in a way he had not since he was a young man, waiting for news of a bill or a case. He would pretend indifference until the letters were placed on his desk, then open Henry's first. Eleanor watched the change with quiet delight. The lines of strain around Arthur's mouth eased. He spoke of the firm in London with an air that made it clear he meant "my son's work" without saying so. Within the house, their own lives began to alter. One evening, as they prepared for a small dinner party, Arthur paused in the doorway of Eleanor's dressing room. She stood before the mirror, fastening a simple string of pearls around her throat. Her gown was of soft green silk, not ostentatious, but flattering. Martha hovered behind her with a hairbrush. "You look very well," he said. She met his eyes in the glass. "Do I?" "Yes," he said. "Terrifyingly so." Martha's eyes widened at the compliment. Eleanor's hand stilled. "Go and see if Mrs. Clark needs anything," Eleanor said gently to the maid. When Martha had gone, she turned. "It is only a small dinner," she said. "I did not wish to draw attention." "Draw it," he said. "For 15 years you have made yourself small in public. It is time they saw you as I see you." "And how is that?" she asked. He stepped closer. "As the woman who has held my name together in ways I did not even see. As the woman who walked to a railway platform every Sunday, so that my son might never feel entirely forsaken. As the woman I have admired from afar in my own house." "From afar," she repeated. "Yes," he said. "I have watched you listening more than you speak, giving without ceremony, standing your ground without shouting. I have thought many times that you were too fine a woman for the life I was giving you. I lacked the courage to say so." "You speak as if you are a trial to be borne," she said softly. "You are not." "I have been," he said. "I would like to be something else now, someone you may lean on, not tiptoe around." She smiled faintly. We are both learning to stand differently, she said. It may take time. I have time, he said. I intend to use it. At the dinner that night, when the conversation turned to charities and parish matters, Arthur spoke up. Eleanor has more experience in such things than any of us, he said. You should speak with her, Lady Ashcombe. She has managed support for a promising young man for years without once turning it into a performance. The ladies murmured approval. Eleanor felt colour rise in her cheeks. Afterwards, in the drawing room, Lydia caught her arm. He is showing you off, Lydia whispered. At last. It is unsettling, Eleanor said, though her eyes were bright. I have grown used to being the quiet one in the corner. Enjoy the noise, Lydia said. You earned it. Later still, when the guests had gone and the house was quiet, Arthur and Eleanor met in the corridor outside their rooms. We made it through, he said. No scandal, no fainting, only a minor argument about pheasant. You were very generous in what you said about me, she said. I spoke the truth, he replied. I have been ungenerous in silence for too long. Speech is a corrective. They stood there a moment, neither quite moving away. Eleanor, he said suddenly, do you remember our wedding? Of course, she said. You could not meet my eyes at the altar. I thought you very shy. I was terrified, he said. I had the sense that I was being entrusted with something I did not entirely deserve. You hid it well, she said. I have hidden too much, he answered. I mean to rectify that. He drew a breath, as if making a decision. I married you once because it was arranged, he said, because it pleased our families and suited our stations. I have lived with you as a husband by law. I would like now to ask if you will marry me by choice. She stared at him, caught off guard. Arthur, he lifted a hand. Not another ceremony before the vicar, he said. We have both had enough of solemnities. I mean something simpler and more difficult. I mean this. Knowing now who I am, what I have done, what I failed to do, will you choose to be my wife again? Not from duty, but from desire, from love, if you can find it still. Her throat tightened. Do you think there was never love? She asked. I think there was once the possibility of it, he said. I crushed it with avoidance. You starved it with silence. It is a wonder anything survived. She took a step closer. Much more has survived than you know, she said. I have loved you in my stubborn, frightened way for years. I have resented you, envied you, admired you. I have wanted to lay my head on your shoulder and been afraid you would not want the weight. I have wanted to tell you of Henry's smallest triumphs and been forbidden. It has been a very crowded love. His eyes shone. And now? He asked. Now, she said slowly, when I look at you I see the boy who made a foolish mistake, the man who tried to forget it, the duke who has carried too many burdens, and the father who went to a railway platform and chose to claim his son. It is hard not to love such a man. He laughed then softly. Is that a yes? Yes, she said. If you will have a woman who takes so long to do the right thing, I will have no other, he replied. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, not with the absent-minded courtesy of long habit, but with deliberate tenderness. She felt the warmth of his mouth through the thin fabric of her glove and shivered. Then it is done, he said. We are married again. Should there not be witnesses? She teased, voice unsteady. There are, he said. The portraits will gossip for weeks. She laughed, the sound low and genuine. He looked at her as if memorizing the moment. Spring crept over Westbury. The fields greened, the hedges thickened, the days lengthened. On a soft Sunday morning, months after that first revelation at the station, Arthur knocked on Eleanor's door. Come, she called. He entered to find her by the window, a letter in her hand. She looked up with a smile. News? He asked. Henry, she said. He has been selected to join a team working on a new bridge. He writes of load-bearing and angles as if they were poetry. Arthur's face lit. Good, he said. He will build things that last. He hopes to visit in the summer, she added. If you wish it. Of course I wish it, Arthur said. This house has been too quiet. It needs a young man clattering up and down the stairs. She folded the letter carefully. You are becoming sentimental, she observed. I am becoming honest, he corrected. It looks much the same from a distance. He held out his hand. Come. Where? She asked, amused. To the station, he said. She stilled. Why? Because I have been thinking, he said. For 15 years you walked there alone, carrying a burden I did not see. That place is stained with secrets in your mind. I would like to give it another memory, something we choose together." She hesitated. "Is that wise?" "People will talk. Let them," he said. "They have had too little to occupy them. Besides, they already talk. We may as well give them something true to discuss." She searched his face. "Arthur, are you sure?" "Yes," he said simply. She took his hand. They walked down the drive side by side, without carriage or groom. The air was soft, the sky pale. Birds flickered in the hedges. A few villagers saw them pass and nodded, eyes curious. "No coach?" Eleanor asked. "I thought we might see how it feels to go on our own feet," Arthur said. "It is a modest rebellion, but one must start somewhere. At this rate you will be walking to London next," she answered. "I will send Henry the bill," he said. At the station, Riggs the station master nearly swallowed his whistle when he saw them. "Your Graces," he said, bowing so low his cap nearly fell off. "This is an honor." "Good morning, Mr. Riggs," Arthur said. "We are here only to sit a while. You need not trouble yourself." "It is no trouble, sir," Riggs said, flustered. "Her Grace is a familiar sight, of course, but to see you as well." "You may see us more often," Arthur said. "We have discovered the charms of railway platforms." Eleanor bit back a smile. They went to her old bench. It looked smaller than she remembered, or perhaps she did. She sat, and Arthur settled beside her. "This feels strange," she admitted. "You are not holding an envelope," he said. "That will account for half the strangeness." "And the rest?" she asked. "The rest is that I am here," he said, "and that you are not looking past me, but at me." She did look at him then, fully. His hair was touched with more silver at the temples. There was a small scar near his chin she had never noticed, a faint line that gave his face character. "I am sorry," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For every Sunday I chose the bench over your company," she said. "Even if I thought it necessary then, I stole time from us. You gave it to Henry," he said. "There is no theft there." "I might have asked you to give it with me," she said. "Yes," he said quietly. "We both erred in that." He reached into his pocket and drew out a small object wrapped in tissue. He handed it to her. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it," he said. She unwrapped the paper. In her palm lay a new envelope, made of heavy cream paper, its edges crisp. On the front, in his hand, were written 2 words, "For us." She swallowed. "Arthur, for 15 years you carried letters for someone else here," he said. "I thought we might begin carrying something of our own. No more secrets, no more hiding. If we come again, we can bring notes to each other or to Henry or to ourselves. Hopes, grievances, small confessions. We can open them here or at home. The point is that there will be no one in your heart who is unknown to me, and no part of me unknown to you." She turned the envelope over. It was empty, and yet it felt heavy. "You are making a ritual," she said. "I am attempting to redeem one," he replied. "Will you help me?" Her eyes stung. "Yes," she said. "Gladly." "Good," he said, "because I have done something impulsive, and you may wish to express your feelings about it on paper." Her brows rose. "What have you done?" "I have written to Henry," he said, "and invited him to come in August, not as a distant ward, but as a member of the family. We shall present him to those who matter as a kinsman under our protection. There will be whispers, of course, but there always are." "And if they guess?" she asked. "Some will," he said. "The intelligent ones. The kind ones will say nothing. The cruel ones will say what they like in their own drawing rooms. We cannot govern every tongue. We can only decide whether we shall live by fear of them." She laughed softly. "You are becoming reckless in your middle age." "I have been respectable for too long," he said. "It grows dull." "And if society turns its back?" she asked. He looked at her with a small, fierce smile. "Then I will turn mine. I am tired of pretending that my worth depends on their approval. I would rather build a smaller circle of people who see us as we are, and stay." She stared at him, feeling something hot and bright unfurl in her chest. "You say that so easily," she murmured. "I know what it costs a man in your position." "It cost you more to carry my burden alone," he said. "Allow me, at last, to pay for my own mistakes." She reached for his hand and held it tightly. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked suddenly. "Henry, me, this life?" He considered. "I regret my cowardice," he said. "I regret the years I let pass without asking you who you were beneath the composed face. I regret that it took a 15-year-old boy to force me to grow up. But do I regret the existence of that boy? The marriage that brought you into my house? The life that has led us here, on this bench, with a chance to start again?" He shook his head. "No, I cannot regret the road if I like the place it has brought me to." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you love me, Arthur?" He looked at her as if he had been waiting for that question. "Yes," he said simply, "I love you. Not as a polite obligation, not as a habit. As a man whose heart is at last awake. I love your stubbornness, your quiet courage, your way of listening more than you speak. I love that you would walk to a cold station and give away your Sundays for a boy who was not your own, because you had promised someone who did not deserve you. I love you for the secrets you kept badly and the apologies you speak well." She laughed through her tears. "You choose odd reasons. They are ours," he said. "I would not trade them for prettier ones." He reached up and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. She leaned into the touch without thinking, her eyes closing briefly. "And you?" he asked. "Can you love a man who took so long to appear?" She opened her eyes. "I have loved the idea of you for years," she said. "The man I hoped you might be. Now I see the real one. He is flawed and stubborn and proud and more tender than he knows what to do with. Yes, I love him. I love you." He let out a slow breath, as if he had been holding it for half his life. "In that case," he said softly, "I should like to kiss my wife. Properly this time." Color rose to her cheeks, but she did not look away. "There is a porter watching," she murmured. "Let him learn what a happy marriage looks like," Arthur said. He leaned in. The kiss was not rushed nor careless. It was the meeting of two people who had known each other's shadows and now finally dared to know the light. When they parted, the world seemed quieter. The tracks gleamed. A distant train called. "Arthur," she whispered, a little dazed. "What will we tell Henry? About us, about this?" "We will tell him the truth," he said, "that his father was a fool and his stepmother a saint with very human flaws, and that between them they nearly ruined a perfectly good marriage until he arrived and forced them to repair it." "He will enjoy that," she said. "He deserves some entertainment," Arthur replied. They sat there a while longer, hands entwined, watching the empty rails. Around them, the small life of the station went on. People came and went. Tickets were stamped. Trunks were lifted. No one paid them great attention. Two figures on a bench, like any other couple waiting for a train. In time, they rose and walked home together, the new envelope safe in Eleanor's reticule, light as hope. Months later, on a bright August afternoon, Henry arrived at Blackwood Hall not as a secret, but as a guest. The house buzzed with energy as he explored its rooms openly, as Lydia plied him with questions, as Arthur pointed out the old oak under which he had once fallen as a boy. Eleanor watched them from the terrace, her heart full. The man she had married and the boy she had helped raise moved side by side, their steps almost in rhythm. It was an imperfect picture. There were still hesitations, awkwardness, old guilt, but there was laughter too. There were shared stories and plans for visits and talk of bridges and fields. That night, when the house was quiet and the stars hung over the dark lawns, Arthur and Eleanor stood at an open window. "Are you content?" he asked. She thought of all that had been lost and all that had been found. "Yes," she said, "I am. For the first time, I think I am living my life and not someone else's idea of it." He slipped an arm around her waist, drawing her close. She rested her head against his shoulder. "Do you know what I have learned?" he said. "What?" she asked. "That love is not the grand declarations we feared, nor the perfect appearances we guarded," he said. "It is the slow, stubborn choosing. On Sundays and ordinary days, at stations and in studies, it is walking toward each other when it would be easier to turn away." She smiled against his coat. "Then we are very rich," she said. "We have chosen each other through quite a lot, and we will go on choosing," he replied, "even when we quarrel again, which we undoubtedly will." "Undoubtedly," she agreed. "I shall try to quarrel with you sooner, next time." "Secrets do not suit me, nor me," he said. They stood there in the quiet, their silhouettes framed in the window, the house behind them no longer filled with unspoken things, but with the simple, hard-won piece of truth. Far away in a city full of smoke and iron, a young man bent over a drawing board, sketching lines that would one day become a bridge. His letters lay in a stack beside him, some addressed to Her Grace, some to Arthur, all read and cherished. And in Westbury, the Duke and Duchess of Blackwood, who had walked 15 years in misunderstandings, finally stepped into a future where every Sunday was theirs to share, where every journey began not in secrecy, but in the light of a love that had been tested, humbled, and at last made whole. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.